Welcome to Running in the 70s, where we interview, meet, and get to know athletes of all kind who were running in the 70s. I'm your host, Matthew Kleinowski. Today, we're in Ohio with somebody who's moving around, a long career, started in Ohio, three-time high school state champion, went to nationals with Kent State, then probably the best runner in the history of Cleveland State, multiple All-Americans, top American-born finisher, cross country, All-American several times, school records from 1,500 meters to 10K, Olympic trials, ran with Athletics West. So there's a lot of stories here. We'll talk about the start of his career and what things were happening there all through the 70s and how things were and some memories. Welcome today on the podcast, Marc Hunter.
It's great to be here, Matthew. I've heard good things about your podcast, so I'm glad you looked me up.
That's great. There's some pictures I got of you running with some of the chums in Ohio, all the way from back in high school and at Cleveland State. I think we were at the same meet once. I ran the JV meet in 76, Penn, Ohio at IUP. Does that ring a bell?
Yeah.
I think you and Ted Roop finished 1-2. But I just had barely caught on to what it meant to run in college. I ran JV. I won the JV meet, and so I had the course record for a second. And for about 25 minutes, I had the course record. Yeah. All right. Anyhow, let's tell everybody your origin story for running and how you got involved in running in school.
Yeah, I was born into a family of jocks. I was a football, baseball, basketball kid. I used to run a half mile around our block, which exactly a half mile was my father, and I would time it, look at my watch and time it. Then I remember watching the 1968 Olympic Games when Jim Ryan and Kip Keino were racing. And of course, they flashed the first half mile up on the screen, and I was like, oh my gosh, they are flying. How can people run that fast? And of course, I was running as fast as I can just to keep up with my father. That just sat in the back of my brain, thinking how cool that was and how I would like to do that. But I was playing 3 other sports. Finally, my sophomore year, I decided I think I want to give cross country a try and not play football. I loved football. Football to this day, as far as competing goes, actually participating in a real live event, that was my favorite sport to play. However, the practices were worse than any other practice. I think the practices chased me away, and I decided to run cross country. Came home, told my parents, and they were like, what's cross country? I had no idea. They knew it was a sport in high school, and that's how I got started. They, of course, gave me their blessing and went up for the first practice and hung with the guys, and then I just got better and better the more I trained. And then I ran track that spring as a sophomore, made it to the state meet. So by that time I was hooked. I realized that at 5'9", 125 pounds, I was not going to be a star in basketball. They called me Bunter Hunter for a reason in baseball. I always batted second in the lineup. Our first guy would walk. I would bunt him over to second, and then we'd get a run in the first inning because our next 2 hitters are really good. So I realized that I think running was my way to excel at the high school level. Never thought about college, never thought about the Olympics. Just thought, hey, this would be fun to do in high school.
Let me ask you about the competition. Football is definitely a team sport, and coming from family of jocks, sports is in your blood. Same thing, 3 sports. I was a basketballer too. I was practice meet on the basketball team the whole way. But how did that change in cross country in terms of team and individual competition for you as you started to excel? How did that fit in?
That's a great question. I think that was part of the formula that got me to switch. I love to win. I was probably an over-the-top competitor. Our football team, when I played in 8th grade and freshman, were pretty good, but then the high school team wasn't very good, and the high school basketball team wasn't very good. And I like to win. I think that was part of the formula that convinced me to run because of an individual sport, all successes. I didn't have to rely on teammates anymore. And I always felt I was the one that tried the hardest in the team sports. And I said, man, everyone should try as hard as I do. I think that's a great question because I think that was part of the formula in attracting me to an individual sport like cross country.
Was your first
I graduated in 74. So my sophomore year, 72.
one?
Yes, I ran cross country.
Yeah. 74 spring, 73, 72. So maybe 71 fall.
Maybe it was 71 fall. You're right.
Yeah.
You're
So
right.
in Ohio, was it exactly 2 miles state meet?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. You had success, but in your junior year, you finished second. How's finishing second when you're hyper competitive, but you're all of a sudden right almost at the top? What'd you get from that, from finishing second?
Oh my gosh, I hated it. It was awful. There are pictures of me after the race. I'm not sure I could resurrect those pictures, but I remember all of them. I was actually wearing an all-star baseball cap when I warmed up and when I cooled down, and I'm sitting on the ground and I'm just very dejected looking. I remember telling myself, this is not going to happen next year. This is not going to happen next year. Ironically enough, I lost one of my best friends in the world, Larry Coy, and I wasn't mad at him. I was mad at myself. And I said, no, that's crazy. I can't let this happen again.
Then in track, back then you ran the mile, and you at states, you won the mile 2 years in a row. When I ran there just a couple of years later in Pennsylvania, if you did run the 2 mile, you couldn't run any other events. What was your track meet thing? Were you running the mile and other stuff? And what happened to get you those state wins?
Yeah, the entirety of my high school running campaign, if you ran the 2 mile, you couldn't run any other event. So I would either run the mile and the 800, or would run the mile and anchor the 4x4. Then when it came to districts, regionals, and state, my sophomore and junior year, I ran the mile and the 800. My senior year, my coach said, hey, you've won the mile already. Why don't we try the 2 mile? And I came back to him. I said, why don't we run the mile and 800 and let's try to win both? And he goes, it's up to you, whatever you want to do. But yeah, I was very frustrated that I ran 1 2 mile in my entire high school career. It was at Buckeye High School. It was dual meet. The weather was awful. I ran 9:36. I set the county record. It was pretty easy. It felt really easy. Yeah, I debated whether to do that my senior year and go for the 2 mile, but I wanted to win both, the mile and the 8.
What was your team like in terms of competition at practice, and what was your training like in high school?
Team, I loved my team. They were a bunch of great guys. I think I maxed out my whole high school career at 30 miles. I didn't keep a log. I remember doing what the workouts were, how far we went, and we never ran on Sundays. And the only thing I did on Saturdays was race. I didn't even warm up. My coach was a basketball coach. And as soon as I started getting good, he started reading in Runner's World. One thing I know, so I was probably running 2 miles total on Saturday, nothing on Sunday. And then
I don't think Runner's World said don't warm up.
I don't think so either. Exactly. But
that's great.
Yeah, I didn't run much, but my team was good, but they were not good enough to get to state. In Ohio, we had a separate individual qualifying state. Individuals qualified separately, and then there was teams. So I often didn't get to run against some of the better runners in the state because they were in the team competition, and our team had never qualified. We were close, but just couldn't get over the hump until I left, and then they got really good, and they went 4 years in a row.
You said earlier that your initial start was, this is just what I'm going to do, but colleges must have started to notice you with those results.
Right, they did, because I was state cross country champ my senior year and then won the mile both my junior and senior year. I think what really got me heavily recruited, a prominent national coach came to one of my meets. I ran the 4x4 and he clocked me under 50 seconds. And he went, wow, you're going to be an 800 meter runner in college. Somehow I got so many letters after that. And that was my junior year. And because they're going, here's a kid that's the state cross country champion, and he can break 50 in the 400, at least in a relay split. My goodness, what, as a coach today, I would think the same thing. I would think, wow, this kid's got quite the range. This is a kid worth putting money against.
Yeah, I talked to various runners at the time, Larry Splash Coy, and some people are front runners. Some people just ran until from the gun and said, I'm going to run till I drop. Did you have a racing strategy with that speed? Were you a kicker?
Yeah, I was a total coward. I would follow everybody and kick the last 100. Every race, I would run in a dual meet, I'd run 450. And then in an invitational, I'd run 417. And the same tactics every time. I was such a coward, wouldn't push it. I remember getting recruited, and the Kent State coach said, hey, I think you can break 410. He said, why don't you try just running even splits? He said, here, and he got out some paper. He wrote the splits down for me, and I never tried that. I never tried it because I was in my comfort zone. Like I said, I was a pretty cowardly racer, and I would just wait and wait. Was 99% sure I could outkick everyone, and it just so happened in high school I was able to.
That's interesting. Not driven by time. Like you said, you like to win, and that was the strategy, and minimum use of energy and everything.
Exactly.
I've seen some pictures later, and maybe this is inappropriate or personal, but it looked like you had no body fat. Were you a 1% body fat kind of guy? We were all thin back then running, but
Yeah, I think I probably was. I don't remember thinking I was thin because I had lifted a little bit for football and basketball, but I never thought of myself as skinnier than the next guy. I think I was thin in college, maybe, but high school, I never thought of myself as being any thinner than some of the other runners. I remember Bob Lund comes to mind. I would look at him and go, man, that's a sturdy looking runner. That's the only guy I thought looked strong compared to me.
up through graduating high school, minimal mileage, any injuries through that time?
Nothing. I struggled with blisters and sore calves because I ran so little, never trained in spikes. So I would wear spikes for 2 races on Saturday. And sometimes I couldn't even run by Monday because my calves were so sore. And I trained in gazelles, which ironically enough, I just drove from Virginia up to Ohio, and I was wearing gazelles. So I've come full circle. But my calves were so sore, and I was a toe striker. So I'd always get a blister on the bottom of my foot, right in that sweet spot. Then my calves were sore, and it would just repeat all season, every meet. Same thing would happen. But I never had an injury. It's probably because I wasn't running a lot of miles.
How did you get along with the other competitors? You're out kicking them, you're running behind them, and then beating them in the stretch, and you're at the top of the field. How did everybody get along in Ohio those days?
Got along fine. They welcomed me. I was a newcomer on the block my sophomore year. I qualified for the state meet, and they all treated me very well. Never had any issues. I know people were upset when I beat them, but they never held it against me. Yeah, just a great time to be running, great bunch of guys to be associated with. In fact, I'm going on a 4-day backpacking trip with a couple of them coming up in July. No pushback or anything from any of those guys. They were great.
And before you graduated high school, we had another Olympic cycle. So by then you were all in on track and still a big fan watching the 72 Olympics. When you went to Kent State, what was that like personally as a transition moving into college, as a person, as a student and an athlete there?
I think the first thing that shocked me, I got my summer workout plan, and the first week was 60 miles. I'm going, that's nearly triple of what I was doing in high school, double for sure. And I did it. And all through high school, I had shin splints issues. The moment I increased my mileage, boom, they went away. Doesn't make sense, but that's what happened. And I just kept doing 60-mile weeks over the summer. I came in my freshman year and I was ready to go. I remember I was recruited as a half miler. So being a half miler on the cross team, they were all shocked that I could run. And then I started doing workouts with the team, and they were going, wow, you don't seem like a half miler to us. And I said, you talk to the coach. And I fit right in. I ended up that season as between the number 1 and number 2 man on the Kent State cross country team, which qualified as a team for nationals. And that was it. I went from running 2 laps around the track to running potentially 25 around the track, and after a few cross country races. But one thing, that team was extremely talented. Oh my gosh, extremely talented, but they like to party a little too much. And I got involved with that my first couple of years. And be honest, that was academically, socially, spiritually, athletically. I wasted 2 years. I'll be completely honest. Wasted 2 years. Then I realized I needed to get out of there. And that's when I transferred.
Now we have the transfer portal that everybody watches in basketball and football. Back then, when you transferred, were you immediately eligible to another D1 school?
No, the NCAA rules were you had to sit out a full year. Actually, when I transferred, I had quit running. I said, I'm going to go home. I'm going to commute to Cleveland State, get my degree, and get on with life.
Oh.
And the coach at Cleveland State said, hey, I will pay for your year that you sit out if you'll just come out and run with the guys. I was like, yeah, that's a no-brainer. So all I have to do is come to practice. And he said, yes. And if you want to live on campus, we'll pay. Cleveland State doesn't have a lot of, it's a commuter school, but they do have one big dorm. So I got a house with 4 of the other guys on the team and totally fell in love with it. The guys on the team were just the most wonderful, good Christian men, just wonderful guys in every way. Strong students, strong runners, spiritually strong. And I was like, all right, I'm going to start competing again. This is fun. That's how that all worked out.
Cleveland State, you did have a great career. I mentioned some of the highlights there. What were the top races for you there as a Cleveland State athlete that you recall? Certainly the top American finisher. How was that race at D1 Cross?
I remember going into the race, the Harrier magazine had a contest, and it was vote on who you think is going to be the top American. And I went, why not me? And this is my junior year. So my whole focus that year was to be the top American. And remember, I hadn't run in the NCAA anything for over close to 2 years now because I had to sit out that year. But I was racing really well. I won several invitationals, including Notre Dame. And it was really easy. And we had a very strong team, and my teammates they encouraged me. They said, man, you got a chance to be the top American. You legitimately have a chance. And I said, I'm going to go for it, and we'll see what happens. I went for it, and son of a gun, if I wasn't 4th overall and the only American in the top, you think 7? Yeah, I think I was the only American in the top 7.
What do you remember about that race from the starting line on?
Oh, the race was unique because we had 2 false starts. We ran 200 meters and one of the false starts. And so we had to all come back to the starting line twice. And you're going, oh my gosh, come on, let's get on with it. And I remember at the mile mark, I was in 90th place because I got stuck behind a pile of guys. We went up around a green. It was at Hangman Valley Golf Course in Pullman, Washington. And I just remember getting so far back, and then I just took off. And before you knew it, I was in, 10th place, got up with a group. 3 guys broke away, Henry Rono, John Tracy. Everybody knows Henry Rono, but no one knows John Tracy was a 4-time world cross-country champion.
Yeah,
and then
Ireland,
Jerry
yeah.
Deegan was his teammate. They were both at Providence, and Jerry was unbelievably good. His career ended kind of like mine did. He had injuries, and it ended early, I think, after that year. And they were gone. They were ahead, but I was with a group with Salazar, Tom Hunt, and then 3 Kenyans. One was from Washington State, 2 were from Wyoming, I think. I was running with those guys, and again, I relied on my kick and outkicked that whole group with about, I think, 200 meters to go, 300 meters to go. We rounded a green and came down a hill, and I was a great downhill runner. I just was I was not afraid to run downhill fast, and that's all it took. Came across the line fourth, felt like I hadn't even run. I felt so good. I've never felt so good after a high level race like that. And then, of course, I'm kicking myself going, well, why didn't you go? I couldn't beat Henry Rono. I know I couldn't have beat Henry Rono on my best day and his worst day. But I thought maybe I could have gotten second. But that's maybes don't get you very far in the world. But that's how that race went. And I was just extremely happy with that. I thought, okay, I'm on my way. After finishing that, that's the first time I actually thought about making an Olympic team.
There on the track, indoors and outdoors, you ran everything. I don't know about your running any 800s, but you ran everything from 1500 mile up to 10K and probably had school records at all those distances. What was your sweet spot in college on the track? What distances did you think you had?
I didn't have a sweet spot. I did run a couple 800s, by the way, and trying to score points in our Cleveland City meet. That was interesting. I qualified for all three events at the NCAA championship, the 15, the 5, and the 10. But to be honest, I never had a great track season. I look back now and I think I was probably low on iron. I was running 100 miles a week. I would go right from cross country to then, because I made 2 world cross country teams my junior and senior year. I wouldn't take a break after NCAA cross country, and I would start training for the world championships. So I didn't take a break. And by the time I got to outdoor season, I was a totally different runner. I was cooked. Now, my athletes take blood tests to see if their ferritin, their / iron is low, and then we can do something about it. I am 100% sure I was low. My ferritin levels were low. My iron levels were low. Probably a couple other things were low, but back then we didn't do all that. We called it burnout. And so I was so fried by track season that guys that I handily beat during cross country were beating me. But I did run fast enough to qualify in all 3 for the NCAA championships. I think both my junior and senior year. But like I said, nothing left in the tank to do well at NCs.
Yeah. Making the world cross country team for the USA, some various times there were races or qualifying races and the top guys made the team. But was yours just a selection based on other performances?
Yeah. My junior year, they took the top American finisher in the NCAA meet, the top 2 finishers in the AAU championships, and they took 6 from a qualifying meet. So because I was the top American, I automatically qualified. My senior year, they switched that all up, and I had to run the qualifying meet in Atlanta, Georgia, and I won that.
Was that an AAU meet?
Yeah, it was an AAU meet. They called it the World Cross Country Championships qualifier.
Yeah.
And I won that. So that's how, in 2 completely different ways, I made the world team in cross.
You competed in those races at Division I. You mentioned Salazar, Tom Hunt, and were they both on the teams with you?
No, they did not make the team or choose to run the qualifier. My Tom, I think, was on the junior team.
He was on the junior team.
Yeah, he may have been on the junior team.
It.
Salazar's a year older than I am, I think, and he never attempted that. And it was smart because he had great track seasons. Had I taken a break, I think, but I got a chance to represent the USA in the world. I don't know how anyone can turn that down. And I wasn't willing to do that. That was really important to me.
One was in Scotland, the other
Ireland.
Ireland, yes. What do you remember about the team you were with and how you guys traveled together? How much time ahead did you get for going over in time zone, acclimating and everything?
Yeah, acclimating was not done great. Didn't really know a lot about that. But I went over, I think it was 4 or 5 days before. I remember my first team, I was like in awe because Craig Virgin was on the team, Bill Rogers was on the team. And here I am playing cards with these guys in a hotel room going and running with them on practice runs going, I am in a different world. This is where I want to be. And thinking how awesome that was, and how many athletes didn't get a chance to run with guys at the top of their game, top of their field, heroes. You just don't get to do that. And here I am playing cards with Bill Rogers going, oh my gosh, what am I doing here? And yeah, they were great. They were great. I remember most of the plane ride back talking with Craig Virgin just about training. And he was free and open to share and give his opinion on training. And I was just awed by the whole trip, running for the USA, being at the World Championships, and then hanging out with those guys. It doesn't get any better than that. My second year in Ireland, it wasn't as good a team. There weren't any superstars on the team, but we actually think we did better, and I ran better. The first year, what they did is Europeans like to have mud on the course. And so in Scotland, they had a dry season, a drought. And so they were getting a little nervous. So they dredged the river. They put mud on the course. They laid mud on the course. Then it rained 2 days, almost 48 hours before the race. And me being a tow runner, I had no chance. I had no chance. You couldn't even see the USA on my uniform. It was covered in mud. My face was covered in mud. I was pulling out mud in all orifices on my body for weeks. And it's quite a unique experience.
It's another interesting phase. To go back to competition. Once you run better and better and you get more opportunities, you're going to lose more because then you're in the absolute top of the stratosphere. So how were you approaching that when you said, now I'm not going to be the best guy on the course, so I'm going to do my best? But how did you approach that competition?
Oh, it was max out on everything, which in hindsight was not good. I was pretty much uncoached in college. So Ted Roop and I pretty much designed the workouts for the team and for ourselves. And I had the philosophy, run how you feel. And there were some morning 10K runs with the Cleveland State team that were unbelievably fast. And I'm going to say this, and it's going to be hard to believe, but I think I ran faster in some of those early morning 10Ks that we did than 99% of my races. And I'm being serious. Now, I don't know if Ted told you the bathtub story.
I don't think so.
Okay. The bathtub story was one of the reasons we ran fast. So we had 5 guys living in a house at Cleveland, downtown Cleveland, and we had no shower. We had 1 bathtub. And so we would start the water. The water came out so slowly that we would start the water before we ran. And it was a 10K. We had exactly a 10K. So the first guy's back got the hot water, the first water. The second guy's back because it took so long. And then we had to go get to class, right? Second guy got the first guy's water. The third guy got the first and second guy's water. By that time, it was gray. There were a lot of things floating in it. It was soapy and it was cold because it took a half hour for the bathtub to fill up. And then the second 3 guys, they had later classes, so they were able to drain the bathtub, start a new tub. But the last half mile was often in all sprint just to get the first bath. And I'm surprised he didn't tell you that. That was another reason we ran really fast. There were some days when you were just so tired, you go, okay, I got the 3rd bath today. All right, I can deal with it. That's how it went. But I pretty much thought that I had to run as hard and as long as I could to be at that level, which was wrong. I paid for it later.
What did you study at CSU?
I have 2 degrees from the University of Oregon. I didn't graduate from CSU. I had changed majors. I went to Kent for 2 years, then Cleveland State for 3 years. I left there without a degree. Went to the University of Oregon, got a BS in geology and a BS in geography. And I was 1 class away from getting a degree in exercise physiology. And I'd never gone back. I don't know. I should have gone back and at least gotten a piece of paper, but I never did. But I accumulated all those hours and they transferred to Oregon. And then when I went there, after my running career was over, I just focused on getting my degrees and getting out with life.
In between, you spent some time in Boulder, and you've already talked about life at Cleveland State, which is no money and not a shower. And what was life like in Boulder? And How did you get there? How did you connect with Athletics West? What was your deal with them?
Okay, after my junior year, the summer before my senior year, I went out to Boulder for 2.5 months. Like I said, I was willing to try anything. So I was going to try altitude training. Came back, again, had a really good cross season. Track season was mediocre, made another world cross team. Then after my senior year at Cleveland State, so I was done, eligibility was used up. I got a call from Athletics West, and they said, we would like you to join the team. And I said, no, I'm going to complete my education and get on with life. I had 3 phone calls. The third phone call was from Phil Knight himself and said, hey, listen, you have a short window of time. This is an honor to represent your country. We think you can make an Olympic team. You got to give this a try. You're going to regret it the rest of your life. And he was absolutely right. So I had agreed to join. And I had first moved out to Boulder in 79 and 80. The Olympic trials were in Eugene that year. So I went to Boulder for that whole year, 79 and 80, to train for the Olympic trials, and ran in the Olympic trials. And sorry, that's when, I'm trying to think. Yeah, it was after the Olympic trials when Athletics West, that whole Athletics West thing came to fruition. Ran the Olympic trials in 80. Then I joined Athletics West. I was in, they call them classes. I was in the second class. Guys like Doug Brown, Ron Addison, another Ohio runner, Craig Virgin. They were in the first class. They were in the rookie class. I came in with Alberto in the second class. Tom Hunt was in that class. A lot of my peers were in that class. When you ran for Athletics West, that you signed a 2-year contract. And they couldn't pay you because we were still 100% amateurs. And they were able to find us jobs. They were actually able to help me with school. So that's when I got my degrees while running for them. That's how Athletics West came about.
So were they giving you lodging or a stipend for that?
No, nothing. They couldn't give us anything.
Oh my gosh.
I delivered pizzas. I worked as a maid. I worked in a bank. I was actually the head of registration for the Boulder Boulder 10K. And I just so happened to win it that year as well.
You registered yourself? Is that
I registered myself. Yeah. and
Wait a minute. They have money prize, right?
They did, but I wasn't allowed to take it. They had $850 first place prize. I'm there at the finish line. The head of the Bank of the Boulder, Steve Bosley, he has it out in cash. He's got it fanned out. And he goes, here you go. Here's what you get for winning. And I said, Steve, I can't take this. And he winked at me. And then, because he was my boss.
He knew where you were staying.
Yeah, he did. He did. And I get home to my apartment, and there's an envelope under the floor mat. And, yep, I will admit it. I took that because I was so broke. And, yeah, that's the story.
Boulder, who were you running with and training with out there? Was the shorter store open? Who were you training with while you were in Boulder?
Yeah, Frank, trained with Frank many times. There was a constant stream of athletes, good athletes coming through that town. The who's who. If you were a runner back then, it was either Eugene or Boulder. There was no other place that even compared to those two spots. And I had the privilege of living and training in both. I was just a stream of guys. Before Athletics West, we ran for the Frank Shorter racing team. He would pay for our way sometimes to go to away meets. We'd run the U.S. cross country championships as Frank Shorter racing team. I didn't train with the same. My best buddy back then was Guy Arbogast, who Guy finished 6th in the world championships in the cross country championships, right behind Craig Virgin, my first world cross. He lived out there. So I trained with him a lot, trained with Rick Rojas a lot. I'm trying to think.
Was Herb Lindsay out there?
Herb Lindsay would come and go. Stan Mavis would come and go. All the CU guys, and they had really good teams back then. Steve Flanagan, trained a lot with Steve Flanagan. Steve Placencia, who eventually became my roommate when we both joined Athletics West on that second team. He was out there. Yeah, and guys would just come and go.
Was Alex Kasich there?
No, I don't remember Alex. No.
Okay.
Matt Centrowitz Sr. came out, and trained there and ran with him several times. So yeah, it was a who's who of American distance running at the time.
I did have one season where I ran in this little Pennsylvania State College conference, and Mark Muggleton.
Oh
did you-
yeah.
So he was at Edinburgh. He beat me in the college state mile, and then he went off to Arkansas. I've talked to him on this and reconnected with him a little bit. I know he was out there with some of the Pennsylvania guys had made it out there too.
It's more the Stemmer, George Malley.
Oh yeah.
Stemmer, Malley. Yeah, that group. They
Yeah,
came
neat.
out too. I think George Malley was actually on the first athletics.
A West.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. You had the encouragement all the way up to Phil Knight telling you Olympics was possible. How was your body taking this training up through that Olympic trials?
Yeah, the Olympic trials, I had won the Boulder Boulder 3 weeks before. I had beaten either what would be current or former 3 or 4 former Olympians. And I'm going, oh my gosh, I am ready to go. I had qualified for the Olympic trials in both the 5 and the 10, and I chose to do the 5. And I thought, man, I have a great chance here. I was still young. If I wasn't the youngest guy in the field, I was one of the youngest. I got to Eugene about a week before the race, and I stayed with the family there. Nike put us up with families. About 4 days before my qualifying race, I started feeling really tired, really weak. And I went, what's going on? I thought mentally I was freaking out. I run my race, and I run something like 13:55, coming second or third last in my heat, just totally exhausted. Could barely walk off the track. Had no idea what was happening. Because I didn't qualify, I changed my flight and flew back to Boulder where I was living that night. Woke up in the middle of the night, and my roommate was Mike Buman, who ran for CU, and he got 4th in the 10K that year. So he had already flown back because he already ran his race, but he was 4th that year, just missed the Olympic spot by 1 spot. And I woke up at like 2 or 3 a.m. in the morning and just delirious, totally delirious. And I felt my face, my whole face was swollen. I went to Mike's room and said, Mike, you got to take me to the emergency room. And he looked at me and he screamed because my face was so blown up. What had happened is all my wisdom teeth started impacting, or whatever it's called. They had started 3 or 4 days prior to that night. What happens is, I guess there's some kind of poison that's released. It was like having the flu, bad case of the flu. And he took me in. I had emergency surgery at 4 or 5 a.m. in the morning, and had all 4 wisdom teeth pulled. They all were impacted. And so that's my one chance at making an Olympic team. It had a little bad luck there.
Yeah, an interesting story. Taken out by your teeth. That's
Matthew, the ironic thing about all this was a year before, I was back in Ohio talking to my dentist, and he's looking at my teeth and going, I think it'd be a real smart thing if you got your wisdom teeth pulled. First thing came out of my mouth was, how many days of training will I miss? And he goes, that's going to be up to you, whether they're still bleeding, all that. It's going to be a pain thing. And I said, no, I don't think so. I don't want to miss any training. And the man was a prophet. And he said, your wisdom teeth will flare up during times of stress. And of course, it's a pretty stressful time for a young kid, for a 20-year-old kid, or 21 or whatever I was. Darn if he didn't nail it. He nailed it.
Well, it's a sudden onset. It's like somebody getting a inflamed appendix. It could just pop up.
Exactly. Which I've had also.
Okay. What about off-ramping your career with the injury that said, okay, I made my shot and things happened? And how'd you off-ramp? And how did you deal with, I'm not a competitor in the racing shoes anymore?
Yeah, I'm with Athletics West now, my first year, and training, my right knee started bothering me, and I pretty much did everything. I didn't want to take any time off. I just kept running on it, just kept getting worse and worse, and it got to the point where I was limping, and my coach at the time was Dick Quacks, who world record holder in the 5K at the time, and Olympic silver medalist. And he used to call me Marco. He said, Marco, you got to take some time off. You got to take some time off. Let's go get that imaged. And I went and got it imaged, and the doctor said, hey, you have completely destroyed part of your medial meniscus. We're going to have to go in and have surgery. And so I said, wait a minute. Can I come back from this? And he says, possibly. Because he was hired by Athletics West, he was the foremost authority on those
running injuries,
especially for the knee. He was a knee specialist. And I said, all right, doc, you're the best. I'm going to put my running career in your hands. And so he took out half of my medial meniscus. There was no other biomechanical things he suggested, but back then that was how it went. And he said, okay, you're free to start running again. So I built up smartly, gradually kept running, got up to 70 miles a week. And then the right knee started bothering me again. So went back in, he imaged it again. He says, you're just grinding up your meniscus. It's your biomechanics. It's the way you run. You just can't. And I remember him after my second surgery, he came into my hospital room and he said, hey, got good news and bad news. The good news is you're going to be able to walk without pain. He said, the bad news is your running career is probably over. And because I had put all my eggs in one basket, that was pretty devastating to hear. And I said, okay, what am I going to do? And I think when you're a professional athlete, which we weren't really technically professionals, but we acted like it when we did everything other sports professional athletes did, that's your identity. So my identity was lost. It was completely lost. Even though I was a new Christian, I'd given my life to the Lord, and it was still, and here all this whole time I'm thinking, God has given me this ability to glorify him, and yet it was taken away. So I had two things I was struggling with. Okay, God, what do you want me to do? Because here's what I thought you wanted me to do. And also my identity was as a runner. I wasn't known as a great student. I wasn't a father. I didn't have this outstanding job and was the CEO of a company. I had two things that got piled on me really quickly, and I had to really grow up. And yeah, that's it.
What support did you have at that time in your life? Who was around?
No family, because I was living in Eugene. And like I said, once you aren't training with the guys, and it's not like they treat you poorly or anything. It's just, we're going to go out for a run.
Yeah.
And I'm not going with them.
Yeah, it's not personal. It's just you're not part.
Exactly. And I saw Steve Placencia, my roommate, make 2 Olympic teams in the 10K. And I couldn't even get on the track. But it was time for me to really grow up and see things that in my life that were much more important than my identity as an athlete.
What was the next identity that took that strong a hold of you?
Yeah, it was my faith. It was my faith that really took hold. I said, okay, God, I'm all yours now. I actually had 2 gods at the time. I had the real God and I had running. And that one was taken away. So I'm going, okay, I'm all in. I'm yours. Do with me what you want. And then, of course, life goes on. I got married. I have 9 kids. Much more rewarding than having a running career. Blessed beyond belief. And do I wish things would have gone better running wise? You bet. I never broke 4 minutes in the mile. I became a 5-10K guy. I got down to maybe 4:01 in a relay split, but never could say I was a 4-minute. And the reason that's important to me now is because my son has broken 4 minutes many times. Yeah. And I would like to be one of those.
Father Sam bet like against another Kent State.
Yeah. And that's the only reason I wish that would have happened, because it would have been cool to be among those. That would mean a lot to my son, and it would have meant a lot to me to be part of that.
You talked about walking away from Kent State, getting your life together and spiritually, physically, running, everything. It's a really nice story, and you've certainly given back the way your family, the story with your kids, and coaching. Let's talk about the career you've had in coaching and how that's informed by your competitive achievements, your son's career, and your faith. How's all that? How did Marc Hunter, the coach, get put together?
Yeah, After my academic career, I moved east to take a job with the federal government in the intelligence community. And I started coaching a running group. It's called the Reston Runners. I lived in Reston, Virginia, and we just help out with them with workouts. Every Wednesday we had an interval workout on the track, and I would design the workouts for them. And the local high school coach called me and said, "Hey, how would you like to coach high school cross country?" And I said, "I would love to, but I have a full-time job. I can't do that." And the moment I hung up the phone, I went, "Man, that sounds like fun. Coaching high school kids. That just sounds real fun." It took me a couple days to get up the nerve to ask my boss. And he said, "Sure, we love people out in the community, but you won't be promoted as long as you're coaching," because I had to be at school at a certain time legally to make sure the kids were covered with a coach, as they called it. So I said, "Okay, I'm going to take the job. That's okay. I'll worry about my career later." So I started coaching at South Lakes High School in Reston, Virginia. It was just a lot of fun. And we had some limited success. We got second in the state one year, and it was without our fourth man. And the team that beat us by 5 points was ranked 10th in the country that year. That was pretty cool. And then my last year before I retired, and I didn't know I was going to retire at this time, I had gotten married in 1994. My wife, who was coaching at a rival high school, joined. We decided, okay, we got to coach together. You can't coach at rival high schools and be married. And so she came to South Lakes with me and coached for 4 more years from 94 to 98. In 1993, a guy by the name of Alan Webb showed up, and we coached him his freshman year. And then we had 2 kids and a third one on the way. And just coaching, I was the head coach for cross country, indoor track, and outdoor track, which was another full-time job besides my regular job in the intelligence community. And so I had this kid come along. He's just a prodigy. And I'm going, oh my gosh. He ran cross country. He got second in the state cross country meet as a freshman. We talked about him swimming. He was a really good swimmer, age group swimmer. And I said, your freshman year, you swim. You go ahead and swim. We're going to try to run 15, 20 miles a week just so the legs, because he suffered from shin splints. All swimming kids do. It's because they're not on their legs enough. But all swimmers I've coached have shin issues. And back then, I didn't know how to fix that. There were all these theories and none of them worked. But anyway, so I said, you're going to run over the winter. You're going to run 15, 20 miles a week. He maybe ran 5 to 10. And then he came out for track and won the 2 mile. But then I just knew I couldn't coach anymore because I was getting home too late and I wasn't seeing my own children. So cold turkey, my wife and I just quit, and it would have been fun. And I was going to coach Alan on the side. And I thought, no, I like the other kids as much as I like Alan. Just because he's a better athlete, why? That's not fair. And great group of kids. And so I just cold turkey quit coaching high school. Then once I had kids, we moved away from Ruston, moved further out west, out into wine country, horse country, great place to raise a family. Joan and I decided to start a club team because there were no club teams out there. It was mainly for our kids. It was mainly for, we homeschooled our kids for several reasons, but there was no athletic track programs for homeschool kids. So we started a little track team, homeschool track team, and that grew and got so big. And it was more than homeschool. It was just a lot of the kids from the county started joining us. And then Drew, in fact, ran on the team as a 9 and 10-year-old and absolutely hated it. I remember him coming up to me after he had 2 medals around his neck. He won the 400 and 800 and said, Dad, I don't want to do this anymore. It's too hard and it's boring. I just don't want to do this. I said, we finished the season. Hunters don't quit. You finish the season, and then you don't have to do this ever again. And I love that story because eventually he came full circle and came back to it. So we were coaching this club team, very successful, 100 kids a season. We actually won the national team championship. I'm trying to think. It was the girls 9, 10-year-olds, and I think we were second in the boy 11, 12-year-olds. And it was just 3 days a week. We didn't accept kids under 9 years old because we thought that was too early. We thought kids should be out climbing trees, riding bikes, playing in the woods, building forts, all the good things kids should do. Then even with our kids that were on our team, we encouraged them to play other sports. So we were a little different from those high-powered youth teams, but we were
focused.
we were successful. Then Drew, he was a football, baseball, basketball guy, just like his dad. He quit football first in 7th grade, I think. He quit baseball in 8th grade, was just going to play basketball in high school. And for some reason, and he doesn't even know the answer, about a month before his freshman year in high school, he says, hey, I think I want to run cross country. Because he always made fun of runners, saying they were not real athletes. And so his mom tried to talk him out of it, because she thought he's going to get on the team and he's going to alienate everyone on the team, ostracize himself, and not be a full member of the team. And so he runs, he's really successful. He gets sick before the regional meet and doesn't do well, but he's hooked. He played basketball his freshman year. So he ran cross country, then played basketball. He turned his ankle about halfway through the season really badly. There was no trainer. It was an away game. And I pointed at him. I went, you, me, let's go to the locker room. And I knew how to tape ankles. So I taped his ankle and I said, hey, do you want to try to play? And he said, yeah, but I'm quitting basketball. And I went, no, you can't quit. He goes, no, don't worry, Dad. I won't quit this season, but I'm done. I'm just going to run. And so by the winter of his freshman year, he had decided, I'm going to give running a full shot. He starts running. The high school he was at was so bad in so many ways. Things like even safety issues. And we would go to practice, pick him up from practice, and kids didn't run. It was anarchy.
Right.
And we're going, we have this kid who's very talented, who is now 100% in. He actually loves running. It's not even the racing part, which he's very successful at. He actually loves running. He can't wait to run. We had his whole high school career, we had to hold him back from doing too much. We've got to either find another school for him or we've got to coach ourselves. So we volunteered as assistant coaches, and we were just appalled at what went on at the high school. Like I said, everything from safety to how you treated the kids, from obviously the workouts. Half the team was injured. They were injured. And I was in charge of getting those kids back to running again. And that's very frustrating. So we knocked heads with the coach. The athletic director came up and said, hey, I think it's best that you guys step aside. And we agreed. We said, yeah. And we were planning to pull Drew out, maybe send him back to Brunswick and live with my brother and run for Brunswick High School in Ohio. We thought about that because he was so good. After the school year, his freshman year, the athletic director called and said, hey, how would you like to be the head coach? And we have fired the coach. She was the coach in cross country and track. And I'm going, no, I've got a full-time job. I have 9 kids. I run a youth program already. I don't have time to do that. And Joan's homeschooling on top of that. Yeah, I went home and talked to Joan about it, and she said, let's do it. We can't do any worse. We took the job, took the track job. Drew was a prodigy. He was just amazing in every way. Then all of a sudden the team was growing. It was just exponentially growing because they'd see Drew walk through the hallways. He's a normal looking kid in every way, and going, if that kid can be a national, what can I? We had really the perfect storm of a lot of things come together for that. And then we won 2 national cross country NXN championships. We owned all the relay. We won the Triple Crown in indoor track in the distance relays, 4x8, 4x mile, and DMR. We had 3 teams in the finals of the 4x mile. We got 1st, 6th, and 7th. We were deep. We were so deep. There's been one team that has been better than us through 7, but there's never been a team better through 14 or even 20. Yeah, that was my coaching through high school. And yeah, it was coaching through high school. And then we quit. It was 2021. It was COVID. Our county went completely off the rails with rules. that our county was the strictest county with COVID. It became a safety issue, we thought. Kids wearing masks outside, couldn't run together outside. Kids were tripping up. Your peripheral vision is lost. You can't see the roots. You can't see the rocks. We had more falling injuries than we ever had. Anyway, I don't want to get into that. So we quit. And then 3 months later, we got the call from Tinman Elite to coach them, which I now coach a professional with Joan. We still coach together.
What's changed? What's the biggest change? You had to do self-coaching most of all the way through yourself as a runner. But what do you think from the coaching that you did get by the time you stopped at the elite level? What's changed most?
Yeah, I'd say a couple things. There's money in the sport now. So if you're good, you're at the top level, like I was for that small window of time. There's money in the sport, and you can use that. And most contracts with shoe companies are through an Olympic cycle, so 4 years. And there's a travel budget with that. There's a physio budget. There's a coaching budget for the top level athletes. So that's one thing. The second thing is, if you have the desire to attempt to try to get at that level, you have a coach. Somebody's going to pick you up. Somebody's going to take a chance on you. You might not get paid any money, but somebody's willing to coach you for you to reach your goals and your dreams. So those are the two major things. For guys at the lower end of that spectrum, it's very much like it was back then. You're completely broke. You're taking part-time jobs. You're barely getting by. You have 2 or 3 roommates. So it's still somewhat very similar. And sometimes those guys don't even have coaches because teams fill up and they struggle as well. And very few of them stay in the sport for 4 years. They just can't. They can't sustain it financially. And once you get an injury, you got to pay for your own doctor, physio, massage therapist, needler, exercise physiologist. So a lot of that's not covered, and you got to pay for it out of your working in a shoe store salary.
Yeah. Yeah. A long time to get in that whole topic, but the same thing with coaches. There's probably not enough support for coaches. That's a loss too, but it's a hard thing to figure out.
Very true. Very true. The team I coach, Tinman Elite, is very under-supported. We're supported by Adidas, but compared to all the other pro teams in the world, we're at the lower end, if not the lowest, as far as getting support to attract other athletes. Our coaching stipend's pretty good. It's definitely not what I was earning with the federal government. So we took a pay cut to take this job, but you usually don't take a coaching job in track and field and in distance running to get paid a lot of money to become wealthy. A lot of coaches will charge athletes so much per month. So if you have 20 athletes, you're going to make a good deal of money. Charge them, I've heard, $250 to $500 a month. So you can make a pretty good living. But as far as the shoe companies supporting the athletes or the coaches, it's not, you're not going to get rich.
Some of the ones I'm watching, since I'm from Pennsylvania, people like Gary Martin got an NIL, and some of those agreements with the athletes at least they have room to negotiate and say, I want to do a community part of this. I want this contract with you to support me in public affairs, to community activities and stuff. There's some neat things going on there where it's changing slowly, but that's just a handful of people. Yeah. What's your outlook going forward? How's your health? How's your coaching outlook? You want to do it forever? How's everything going?
Yeah, I definitely don't want to do it forever. We just signed in March. We signed another 4-year deal with Adidas. So we're committed through the next 4 years. I have 4 grandchildren. I love being a grandfather. If anything's going to pull me away, it's going to be that. I'll be honest, that's number one thing I want to focus on. Unfortunately, 2 of my grandchildren are in Maryland. That's who I was with last night. And then Drew has 2 grandchildren. So they're out in Colorado. So I get to see them several times a week. But no, I can see myself retiring. And I really like retirement. I loved my job for 30 some years with the government. It was a fantastic job, but the commute was awful. Living in the Beltway in DC, and that's what part of what brought me to Colorado. But yeah, I don't have a contract. I don't sign a contract, so I could quit at any time. But there's several things that are as honorable as helping someone reach a dream. And I think coaching, mentoring, being a teacher, being a pastor, or whatever, I think there's something honorable in that. And when your athletes succeed, it's quite a big high. I don't need drugs. I really don't. I spend time with my grandkids and my athletes perform well. I'm good. I don't need anything else.
That's a really great story, and you have inspired a lot of people, and the nice stories with how you got along with your competitors and your teammates and all the stuff you've done with your family and with all the kids whose lives you've had this positive impact on behalf of humankind. Thank you for everything. It's really nice to spend time with you, Marc. I've been trying to track you down for quite a while. You're a busy guy, and I'm glad we got to talk to this. Thanks for all your time today, Marc. It's a really nice story, and it's great to hear these very detailed memories and reminiscences and experiences and your outlook on them now 50 years later.
Yeah, I can't say how much fun this was, Matthew. Thanks for looking me up and finding me through Splash Koi. And yeah, love that group of guys back in the 70s. They were special. We had a special bond, still do have a special bond. I texted with Ted the other day, Ted Roop. So I'm glad you already had those two on. They're two of my heroes in life. Thanks again.
So thanks so much for your time, Marc.
Yeah, Matthew, it's truly has been fun.
Thank you very much. I'll talk to you later. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed another episode. Do you have someone you'd like to hear interviewed on the podcast? You can leave a comment on the YouTube channel or on the website, running70s.com. That's running70s.com. Let me know what you think of the episodes and anyone, including yourself, you'd like to hear interviewed. I hope you enjoyed another episode of Running in the 70s. Voices, stories, and memories of athletes who were running in the 70s. Until next time, wherever you are, keep looking forward and don't forget to look back.